It's hilarious.
We're live.
No more tacos.
That's your
Hey,
cue,
Ben,
Justin.
You're supposed to introduce us. What are you doing?
It's my cue. Yeah, Ben's the intro guy.
No, he left. He literally left.
Left, so then you're the backup guy.
Welcome to the totally professional, the most professional Dresden Files podcast. We're your hosts, whoever we are.
Some would say the only professional Dresden Files podcast.
We would. We'd be those people. So anyway, we're continuing Cold Days for like the 11th time. I think this is technically only episode 2 for it, right?
So yes, this is part 2.
It feels like part 4 because we had a couple of false starts in there. So
yes, we did try.
Yeah,
not very hard, but we did.
Yeah, I was going through the Dragon Con Q&A that was linked. That's probably the only bit of news is that Jim was at Dragon Con. Didn't seem like there's anything too crazy. EG dropped a little nugget saying that I guess one of the chapters in the Word of Kemmler was about Black Court vampires, which is why Mavra wanted the book. So yay, more crazy theories you can generate and stuff.
Yep. Nice tidbits, nothing earth-shattering.
Right. So other than that, I mean, do we have anything else before we just dive in? We're going to spoil everything. We're going to swear a whole fuck ton. So be prepared.
We may or may not kick people off the show indiscriminately, apparently.
He is now blaming it on technology.
I think it's the Taco Bell's revenge that he was promoting Del Taco, quite honestly.
They were like, and cut him, get him. Yeah. Like, I mean, honestly, that's not fair. They got to pay us for those kinds of privileges. So
yeah.
They've been paying him. He just hasn't been sharing it.
Oh,
he's embezzling.
That's why he keeps saying we're professional. So it's Okay.
Mystery solved.
All right. So when we last left our hero, basically we were at Demon Reach getting the dumb version, and then we spent a lot of time arguing about if there were 12 or 13 tunnels, which I think we had reached the conclusion that there are 13 tunnels, and the 12 number in Cold Days is a misprint or mistake. Or whatever you want to call it. So
yes. I believe even Priscilla said something. Yeah, it's meant to be 13.
And I mean that's
he says it in the first chapter of Skin Game.
Right. So, official retcon. I'd like to see how that makes it into the time travel book. We're like, Dresden goes back in time. We'd be like, I need an extra tunnel here. Okay.
Who has a shovel?
Right.
And it's easier to just make like, you don't see this tunnel.
Yeah, because that's the really bad.
He reveals his own tunnel from himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, his skills are probably going to be that much better by then. So
he's a little better at earth magic than he used to be.
So not just veils it. You think he's going to literally excavate it with earth magic? I like
Obviously.
it. So pretty much where we left off, I think, was between that and arguing about whether or not 24 hours is 24 hours Chicago time or not, which I think made the most sense because that was where the local portal let out. Was where I kind of like left it. But after that, we were getting back on the boat to go back to Chicago.
Yes, we're roughly at the chapter 18 beginning of trying to leave Demon Reach, and we didn't yet make it to the boat.
Right. So, I mean, the next line in here is the line about sextents. So, other than that, Thomas talking about like ever since those pirate movies, this stuff is everywhere. I've even got a sextant, and Dresden be like every tent you have is a sextant. So that's where we kind of left off. Him. So the big reveal, of course, being more about the whole time travel explosion and Chicago and the Midwest actually being at stake. So Dresden starting to take that part of it more seriously, where he was just like, I don't got time for this shit. I've got to go kill an immortal. Now he's like, well, fuck, I guess I better save Chicago while I'm at it. So he and his brother are arguing a bit, and a lot of this stuff, the context didn't make it into my memory as much, but he just kind of asks Thomas if he's busy, and Thomas gives him a regular, like, kind of flippant answer. He's like, okay, so after that, would you like to help me save the city if you don't have plans? So you just get some of their banter and whatnot. During the conversation, you find out that Laura has actually been one of the backers of the Paranet. So she has like a special response team that she calls out anytime, they need heavy hitters for the Paradet to kind of like chase off some of the Fomor and the like.
Definitely
we're
love the
going
idea
slightly
of
out of
Lara.
order.
Are we? Did I skip too far ahead?
Well, I think you
I'm not
focused in
reading
on the.
While we're doing the episode, I'm reading my notes.
Yeah,
So
I'm just kind of skimming through it, trying to keep us more or less in order because this conversation, I think, happens after they get attacked.
okay. So
Because-
I didn't take any notes about the attack because I just generally remember it happening. So
Yeah,
I think it's before the attack.
not according to my ebook.
Okay, I mean,
right, she's reading it as we go, whereas I can't do that nonsense. So if you want to take the milepost, go for it.
Well, yeah, so they kind of just talk about prioritizing things, and like Maeve is just as important as Demon Reach exploding.
Ironic.
Yeah, then they have the Sextant comment as they notice the jet skis of the.
Yeah, they literally
Red
get
Cap.
like shot at right as they're coming off the dock.
Yeah, I mean, because they had one line of it, like dawn is now happening and now it's different. That means Fairy is able to be left by the
Right.
Red Cap. Yeah, and then there's fighting and stuff. And then I think after that, when they're dealing with the bullet holes, is when they have that conversation.
Okay. But I mean, even before that, we have Molly do her one woman rave thing and her fog cloud over the water and
Mhm.
talking about how like Harry's not even sure he could do that.
They have
type
that
of stuff.
conversation in the SUV when they're driving away.
Oh, okay. There you go. So,
Yeah. There's a lot of Harry and Thomas in this book, which is fantastic, but it is keeping it into the right order.
right. Yeah, because I mean, as they're driving away, I don't remember if anything happens before, but I know they have their meeting with Fix,
When they
very
get there.
shortly. So,
Yeah, that was when they arrive.
right, that's their next main stop. And then that's where they set up the whole thing at the garden, the first garden.
No,
Well, Fix threatens him
Mhm.
Fix-
before.
Fix
That's
does
true.
Exactly what he was told to not do the last time they were in the same situation.
Mhm.
And it's not. He sets up the meeting with Cat Sith who goes and set up for him.
So I think Fix was threatening him to stay away.
Right, right. Okay.
They get into Thomas's
Town.
apartment and he contacts Vaterung.
right.
Then he summons Cat Sith.
Yeah, to get rid of Lara's goons.
hmm And asks Cat Sith to arrange a meeting with Lily.
Right. And Thomas is very respectful once he realizes who Cat Sith is, and even children can learn manners. So,
That whole exchange was great.
right. Oh, right. Okay. I remember the context of one of the other lines here. So they're at Thomas's apartment, and he unplugs the phone and makes a circle around it. He's like, "You're good for money, right?" He's like, and then Harry hexes everything on in the apartment. So
Because that would startle Lara's people into scrambling and trying to figure out what's going on. And that is information he's then basically giving to Vaterung as a peaceful gesture for wanting to meet and get information from him.
right, that was his price,
Mhm.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And, then they summon Cat Sith and said, everyone be calm.
Right. What? Yeah. And then he goes from there to Max, pretty much to meet Vaterung, right? So
Yeah. After Thomas makes nice with Cat Sith, they
Right.
said, we have to go to accorded neutral territory. And Molly says, oh, good, I'm starving, which is the classic way of introducing Max plays now.
right. Because that's a Murphy line, even, right? Like, doesn't she say that a couple of times? Where, like in previous books, be
Yeah.
like, yeah, we need to go to Max. Oh, good, I'm starving, or something like that. So
Yeah,
I feel like it's not the first time we've heard that line. I guess.
definitely
So,
not. I think Molly said it a couple of times in the past. And
Gotcha.
Murphy? I don't know.
Yeah, so really fun conversation with Vaterung. The only two nuggets that I really noted was that apparently most of the Grey Council knows about Demon Reach, which should give you an idea of how up on the power scale they are. And then the fun conversation about paradoxes and trying to explain time travel to Harry, and how there's a conservation of history is how he puts it. And then the whole grandfather paradox, too, like what happens if I go back in time and kill my grandfather? He beats you senseless, I presume, so. And then him being like, wait, shit, Vadarung knows who Ebenezer is. Like, that's problematic, so.
Well, we know he knows Ebenezer, but he knows they're related.
Mhm.
Right.
Which means that Vadarung knows probably a hell of a lot more, which makes sense given who he is.
Right. Well, and I mean, we should know this because he went to Chichen Itza as Vadarung, presumably, right? So he was there as Vadarung, so the mantle Vadarung knows all of this stuff, right? Like that's what's kind of funny because it seems like Vadarung can play across his mantles, but it seems like otherwise the knowledge can be sequestered to me. Like, I don't know if that's just a me thing, but
I think that's just a you thing, because that's definitely not how I get it. The person that holds all the different mantles has all this knowledge. I don't know how much of it might be kept if the mantles were passed on to someone else.
right.
Yeah. Like, I'm pretty sure everything he knows when he's Kringle, he knows when he's normal Odin. But, if Mab calls him up as Vadarung, he can, like he says in the next book, tell her to kick rocks. With Kringle, that information comes more freely.
Yes.
Right.
So he has to go by the courtesies of whichever mantle he's being invoked as.
Or obligations, since that's the more important thing. Vadarung is not obligated to Mab, but Kringle is.
Right. But the information is still there.
Still there. Gotcha.
I mean, even when Harry calls him up in Skin Game, he's expecting him to come as Vadarung. So he's expecting to get this information from Odin, not Kringle.
Right.
Ah, I forgot about that.
And he even said he came as Kringle, really? So.
Right.
Well, I mean, he has been very helpful as Vadarung / Odin.
Right, and there's no reason for Harry to think that he's necessarily going to not know the information if he comes as the other. He's just surprised at it because it didn't make sense, but then Vadarung explains the obligation thing.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay. I'll have to pay more attention to that in Skin Game because thinking about it now, honestly, like Kringle would be more obligated to Harry on multiple levels than Vadarung would be, in theory, from what we know right now. Because, I mean, first of all, Kringle having ties like as a fairy to Winter Court, but also the fact that Harry kicked his ass. So like under the hunt, presumably, like Harry's got the pecking order now. Which,
well, at a minimum, it means he could probably be a leader of it just about any time he wants, like the Earl King and Kringle are.
Right.
I don't know that necessarily means he owes him, but
debts don't transfer across mantles, right?
No, it's there's even a word of Jim about this. If you owed the Winter Lady, you now owe Molly.
Yeah,
so it transfers that way. But it's like if you owed Harry Dresden, Wizard of the White Council, that doesn't mean you owe the Winter Knight something.
Right.
If you owed Molly something, not the Winter Lady.
Right, then you owe it to Molly. So, I mean, it's technically, because these people are the people who hold both these jobs, in essence, there's no difference, but there's a huge difference when it comes time to call on these things. So,
if the mantle passes.
Obligations and stuff.
Or if the mantle passes. So, if Molly died and you owed her a favor specifically, well, too bad. But
Harry is building up a debt to Vadarung / Kringle / Odin and everything.
Well, he owes him a favor after this conversation at a minimum.
And
yes.
What did he pay for Skin Game? Or is that taken out of Mab's ownership debt obligation?
Kringle, he says as much. You have the right to call on.
He also pays, right? Yeah. With the the cufflinks.
Yeah.
And the Chichen Itza stuff was literally a gift. So, like, so far, we've been very good about keeping the ledgers clean.
Except in this one, all he has to bargain with is a debt.
Well, but he pays information for a favor. That's pretty common.
But he's forced to pay those cufflinks. Like, Vadarung don't want him to owe him anything. He's like, pay me the cufflinks.
He doesn't give him the cufflinks. He gives him a nickel.
Yeah, and he doesn't have a nickel, which is why it was like, well, the price is a nickel. What do you have? And that driving home that point that Odin has always cared about is what do you have? You have friends.
He teaches him a lesson, and then he takes his offer of a favor, which he's probably going to use for, hashtag Team Heel Turn to get him involved with the gods.
I thought he said that was Hades. Hades gets him involved.
That might be, yeah, you're right. But Vadarung's going to have talked him up. I think there's both those tidbits were in there. Like, Vadarung talks him up to them, and Hades is like, oh yeah, no, you know this guy. He'll be good.
Right. I mean, it could be like the blood rights thing where he's doing Kringle's or Vatarung's friend a favor, Hades, right? Hades needs a guy, and Vatarung's like, cool, I've got a guy who owes me a favor. Here you go. Boom. So anyway, all of that's very fascinating right before they get jumped by an outsider. Not that that's important at all to the rest of the story. So is there anything else we want to cover before doing that?
No,
Let me read.
I'm glad to pay you Tuesday for a sandwich today. That's right.
And there is the line of Molly is like feeling with her senses into that. It's like figuring out who Vatarung is and how powerful he is. And I think Thomas says about what Harry's demanding from Vatarung. It's like, think of doing that to Donald Trump or George Soros.
Right.
Yeah, by demanding the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And well, he and Thomas then have that little talk about how he's looking at Molly like she's food and suppressing her emotions, and you don't want to be a monster like me, and all the Harry self-pitying shit that he goes through.
Yeah.
Oh, the Thomas self-pitying thing that he goes through.
No, this was mostly Harry's. Thomas was calling him out on it.
I mean, there was a little bit of Thomas's self-pity in there too.
Well, I mean, when your brother is essentially like, I don't want to be a monster unspoken like you.
Right.
So
I know that look because it's been me, type of stuff. So yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And if Harry doesn't control the crazy winter urges, then he'll do something wrong.
Do math. Just do math and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, just to touch on it here, because the conversation's going to happen later, and I'm not 100% sure it's in my notes anyway, though. But like, Harry's going to do something wrong by Harry, right? Like, that's what's funny, because like Molly's like, but if it's given, like you can't do anything wrong if I want it. So yeah. Anyway, okay, so then it gets foggy outside, right?
Yeah.
And
Molly is sent to go deal with the little people, fairies, and then they're talking and it's foggy and it's like, I thought the mist already burned off this morning, and enter Sharkface.
Right. He comes in as a sphere of rags, which is very confusing until he's like a dude inside the sphere of rags and stuff. So he's lanky, tall, and he's got to stand hunched. That's how tall he is. So like probably taller than Harry tall.
Taller than Tiny, I think. Wasn't because Tiny was still standing up straight in small favor, I think.
No, I thought he was crawling around on his knees.
Tiny was like not crawling, but like very hunched over.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I was gonna say, yeah, he could barely fit in there.
Okay.
He was like scraping, and he was like,
Yeah, he hit the ceiling fans.
It was like magical that he was able to get in the door type of thing, and then the ceiling fans like broke on his horns and stuff. But yeah. I don't remember when the shooting started, because pretty much it seems like Mac and everybody just start unloading on the thing as soon as it like breaks in the door, right?
Well, yeah, Mac with his shotgun. He basically, the second he sees it, is like boom.
Right, and then
wait, before he entered,
it denies him 3 times, right?
Yes, Sharkface was demanding send out the wizard 3 times.
Right,
and Harry says no, fuck off.
Right. And then he chucks in was it a bomb or was it actual magic? Then he blows in.
Well, it was the speaking stone, right? He threw in like a speaking stone. He was talking through, and then it exploded. Yeah. And then he comes in, and they shoot at it some, and like the rags basically absorb the attacks and everything. And then he's like, if you surrender, I'll spare your companions. And then Mac reloads. Like, that's my favorite thing. Mac's like, okay, come get some, you bitch. So like this whole thing is
they also clearly have history, right?
Right. Or
he also tells Harry when he and Thomas are bantering, he's like, don't talk, kill it.
Just kill it. Yeah.
So
whether or not they have history, it seems like there's some of that, but they're certainly aware of each other as much as it matters, because
at a minimum, Sharkface knows who Mac is, because the first thing he says to him is you. And then he tells him he has no place in this.
Watcher.
Right. No place here, Watcher. Yeah. So, and then I think it was Mac was saying, maybe it was Sharkface still, like, you made your choice long ago.
Yeah. You have no place in this, Watcher. Do you think this gesture has meaning? It is every bit as empty as you. You chose your road long ago. Have the grace to lie down and die beside it.
Right.
So, I think this is where we should touch upon, favorite theories. Who is this Mac?
tangent number 3 today?
Yeah, like
Okay, who said we needed more content? We need to. Let's go on some tangents.
here we are on part 73 of Cold
think it was
Days. So, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like Max, like the whole McAnally name, right, drills you into like the Celtic side of things, right? And so you've got all of that, right? But there's a lot of things that cross over multiple different kinds of fables and myths, like Watchers. I'm honestly, the nerd that I am, like Watchers reminds me more of like modern comic book shit than what we've got a lot in ancient myth. I'm sure that there are some Watchers, right? The fact that he's like Mr. Clean and like stains don't touch him makes you think maybe a little bit of like White Gods, point like side of the fence or something like that. So we've had all sorts of theories like Dionysus or somebody like that, or literally Jesus Christ, or on and on and on, and me, I tend to think he's more like one of the angels, like, or an archangel, possibly an unnamed one. But still, like, how do you rectify that with like McAnally's, right? Like, it doesn't strike me that somebody out of like the Celtic or Gaelic myths would fit his power level and what I would expect out of him, and him being a Watcher. Like, there's nobody in that mythos that I could think of fits the bill. Not that I'm like an expert, but I got nothing to latch onto there. Whereas like I could see him being like adjacent to Uriel in some way, where he was supposed to watch, but he broke the rules, and that's part of why he's not allowed to get intervened anymore, is because he already made his choice. I don't know. Any other favorites you want to throw out there?
I honestly don't. I mean, he's definitely something like powerful. Less powerful, but like I honestly don't know what he is. I have no solid theories on him. I mean, are we getting a hint with the fact that he likes to brew beer, or is that just like a red herring?
Well, yeah, and that's part of it too, right? Because most of the theories that I'm familiar with come from like the side stories where he's like, the world famous brewer, and he's entering these contests, and he seems to have some kind of attachment with crap. Why can't I think of the name of the monster now? The
Grendel.
The Grendel, and all of that stuff, right? So it's still Northern Europe in there somewhere, right? But at the same time, like,
did Sigrun respond to Mac in any way to seem that they knew each other?
Nothing
No,
special.
because I think he met up with Sigrun when they were
already hunting, but afterwards they were drinking beer together, Harry and Sigrun, and I was just wondering, did she respond to him in any way?
I don't remember, but I don't think so.
Right.
Nothing's like.
I'll look.
Okay. Encyclopedia it up.
And we know he's basically immortal, right? He heals as soon. The only reason he doesn't heal is if he doesn't want to. It seems like.
Well, yeah. I mean, they mentioned this in the later chapters. It was like if because he was unconscious. That's why he healed last time, or whatever it was.
Yeah, because in the other short stories, when the bar got attacked, he, I think, refused pain medication and is just being conscious the whole time, and he healed at a normal rate.
Yeah, so which suggests to me that that's like a willful effort. Like, he chooses not to heal, and then when he was unconscious, he healed.
Right.
Read the quote about you made your choice, blah 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 again.
You have no place in this, Watcher. Do you think this gesture has meaning? It is every bit as empty as you. You chose your road long ago. Have the grace to lie down and die beside it.
Right.
So that kind of opens the question for what is he watching for? I mean, we already know, kind of meta-narratively, big apocalyptic trilogy, and of course, a watering hole near this great nexus of the magical forces or whatever. It's going to be a great place to wait around for that. And especially when you learn that Harry Dresden's there, and then you get to know Harry Dresden, So I have a strong feeling. What does the watching entail? Is it watching everything that's happening, or is it watching for something? Is it watching the whole tale of all existence, and it ends with his death? Or does it only end with his death if the outsiders win? So
is he God?
So,
I mean,
I think some people have taken it that far.
They have.
People have
I think
taken
it's
that
a little
far.
too on the nose.
Yeah,
I think so too.
Well, and part of why I wanted you to read the whole quote about the road again and everything like that is because I'm like, let's just do a quick Google search, right? So we've got like, what did I even put in? It was like Nordic lore White Watcher, right? Because we've got more hits there than anywhere else. What's the number one result? Heimdall, who can see crazy distances, who was the whitest of the gods, who, you know,
Heimdall's also
probably
basically
could
the
get his drink
gatekeeper.
on, right? Like,
It seems that it fits the schema that Mac might have been the gatekeeper when the Norse were in power, but only thing I have to back that up is that he gets called a watcher.
right. And that's the thing. Like,
Sure.
every time we try to pin it down, we get like 80% of a fit. And then there's just that one little
Right.
detail that doesn't quite fit.
So
Like, I'm now a fan of the Heimdall theory that just came out here, right? Except the fact that Sigrun would definitely fucking know who he was.
So in the
But Odin does, though, right? Doesn't Odin know?
Odin
Odin
knows
knows him.
sure.
And
but-
Mab knows. All the right people know.
Thinking about
Yeah.
God,
Right.
Vadarung made a specific effort and was very happy to have made Mac laugh right when Harry was walking into the bar. He seemed very happy with that.
Right.
And in the text that EG just helpfully posted, it's Guard smiled slightly and bowed her head to him. Mac departed. I think Guard knows who he is and was just going with his alias, or at least is vague enough to allow that.
Although I'm going to have to scrounge it up because
Well, and that
almost
completely
100%
fits.
certain that there was a word of Jim that said he's not a Norse god.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
But he's not a
Because
god.
somebody asked him about Heimdall before.
Because that would have been a perfect fit. Well, I mean, if there's a word of
And
Jim, there's a word of Jim.
Right. That's the problem, right? Like all of the theories about Mac. It
Well, I mean,
always
then that is a 0% fit.
why he's
Well,
not
there's 12 tunnels in cold days and 13 in
Mac.
I mean, the prevailing theory for quite some time was Grigori, which is a Watcher angel. You know, they were basically the giant. I mean, not that it matters. They were like the giants among men who walked the earth, and then got involved with mortals and scioned Nephilim and stuff like that. And then they obviously were cast down, sort of. So
One thing that can crop up in kind of larger body of mythological literature is the idea of the neutral spirits who haven't chosen one side or another. In the Fae, you have winter, summer, and the wild Fae. But more broadly, you have something like White God versus outsiders, and then the people that did make the choice, which fits the Grigori Watchers. But sometimes in that category of middle spirits is specifically kind of benign river spirits or benign gods here and there, like the little gods who handle the little things, or who have just temporary kind of domain, who have limited knowledge or limited power. And that would fit if maybe that would fit the kind of syncretic egalitarian vision of mythology that the Dresden Files kind of has. You have Mouse being called a little brother by Uriel, right? Uriel says that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. And in a similar vein, you can have the Watcher being the Grigori angel, Mac being the Grigori angel, just watching what happens. He did not choose to fight for the host. He did not choose to rebel. He chose just to watch and wait. And that fits that. But the other
But
middle spirits could have.
fence-sitting got you sent to hell as well, because that's what Last Shield did.
Yeah, they got kicked out for sure. You know, they fell, if not all the way to hell. Like in some mythos, there's
Sure.
a middle ground, but like you
Sure,
said, Last Shield definitely waited too long and made her choice.
And-
So
And whatever Mac did, he is a personal enemy of the outsiders.
right. And I kind of like the idea that maybe he's a gatekeeper, right? But we already know who. Well, I mean, unless he was the gatekeeper before,
Before Rashid, yeah.
so
Well, the gatekeeper before Rashid is implied to be Odin, with the eye being Odin not having the eye and Rashid having his
Because they're
eye.
the same person?
No, oh my goodness. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they're the same. They're not. But the old seeing eye Odin with his little eye motif. He's got the little eye that comes out.
Yeah,
It
your
gets taken
identity
and
is so secure
and
that you
it's-
have your false eye has false.
Right.
It's the tool of the office. Just okay. So next on Dresden Files podcast, why Ebenezer is actually Mother Winter, because
That's not
Yeah,
no.
get the
Rashid and
fuck out.
Vadarum
Yeah.
you cannot prove that they are not the same person. That is completely different than the other bullshit that you're trying to throw.
I can't wait till that gets disproven this next book, because we'll finally see them in the same place at the same time.
Really?
Okay.
Prove it.
Everything's going to happen in peace talks. Well, when he fucking prints the book, I'll have lots of proof for some of my crazy bullshit.
I have no indication Rashid will be there.
He's one of the senior council members.
So
He's one of the
he really
talky
fucks off
ones.
and does whatever his thing. He just goes around gatekeeping, whatever that
whoa,
means.
whoa, whoa. Rashid was not a talkie. Member of the senior
You're gonna
council.
latch onto that one,
Sir.
So, all right.
Rebuke you. Okay,
All
continue.
right, so that was fun, but basically more the most we get out of Mac in the actual book and everything like that is Harry asking him for some help or some information, and Mac being like, "Can't, I'm out." And then Harry basically being like, "When this is over, we're gonna have a really long conversation," and Mac being like, "No, we're not," which is like more than he's spoken in the entire series up to this point. So
Before excluding changes, really, but
Right.
it is weird to think of all of the help Mac is not giving while also giving and like shotguns and all that stuff.
yeah,
Versus-
but Mac's got to know that it
From-
doesn't actually do anything.
Mac gave Harry his fucking car.
Right. And that was
It was in Stormfront to get away from
Was in
Morgan long
Stormfront.
enough to be able to go Victor Shadowman. Because
right,
he
right.
went to Indiana.
Yep.
I think he has to be. He's very limited in what he has to say, right? Like when after this, when he lines up the 3 beer bottles and like
Right.
hitting the Watchers.
Yeah.
But maybe he's not so limited in like mortal, normal, everyday, like lending someone a car.
Maybe. I mean, it could be he can't say things about the outsiders, like the ways that fairies are restricted to saying things, but he can put beer bottles on a table.
And it could be, the beer is such a primordial thing. It's literally what kept people alive in the Ice Age. So beer is just a thing. It doesn't have to be connected with the Norse gods anyway. And so this completely fits. He has to live as a mortal. Beer is what mortals have been drinking. So he has an attachment to it, and he's really good at brewing it by now because he's had thousands and thousands of years of experience,
That was
not
so
millions.
much bullshit, but okay.
What? How?
I mean,
You were like just woo.
there's no special thing about liking beer.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I'm just saying, like, if he's the angel thing and whatever, he's watching, he's out. Maybe the thing is that he's doomed to watch as a mortal and as an immortal mortal, whatever. Some kind of like, he's actually immortal, but he lives like a regular human. And that would explain why he's able to do things like loan out the car. He just can't provide knowledge or supernatural assistance or whatever.
Right. And you got to think too, right? Like if EG just posted the Q&A, the word of Jim, where he says that he's not a Norse god, right? So like one of the things that I have a tough time reconciling Mac with is that if he is some kind of supernatural power, he's the most clued in supernatural power that we've seen, right? Like I get it.
Barring like Uriel, right?
Well, even more so than Uriel, because Uriel can talk the lingo, right? But he's not coming at Harry with the if you have an airplane just to use the headlights thing, right? Mac fucking knows mortal technology. He's got the guns. He gets the car. Mac owns a fucking car. Which other the only reason why the she do it is because it's expected of them in their guise.
But
Where
even
it's like-
in that, they can't make it seem not glamorous.
Right. And
Right.
but I mean that's part of it too. But
Yeah.
like the jet ski thing and them shooting guns, right? Like that's a little hard to reconcile with this theory that I'm spinning right now. But like that's one of the things that's always thrown me for Mac is like even like Mab, when she comes to the mortal world and whatnot, she's still off.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if Mac didn't know all this crazy shit he has no business knowing, we wouldn't know that he's not just a mortal dude.
Yeah.
You know,
But
like
he also lives here.
The
man.
amount of respect he gets from extremely powerful supernatural beings as well is
right.
I mean, Mab doesn't spend most of her time in the mortal world either. Mac, by dint of living here, would have to know these things.
Well, she's BFFs with Sarissa and goes around to baseball games. And
Yeah,
stuff.
they go do events, but she doesn't stay. I mean, when she
They watch
stays
TV
here,
together.
winter falls around. You can't
On
watch
the
TV
weekend.
at Arctis Store.
Right.
Don't know.
The signal's
Of course you
probably
can.
crap.
I bet you she has like a condo in every.
I don't discount that she owns property. I'm just saying
She,
she
like-
doesn't stay in the. She's too powerful.
What
to
if she just
stay in the
moves with
mortal
the
world
seasons
for
Just
too
like,
long?
Okay, going to
She can-
Denmark now. It's winter there.
I mean, look what happened when she stayed. Or she stuck around in Ghost Story for what was it, 6 months, and the whole
Yeah,
place
she
was
will
like
just stay
snowing
into
everywhere.
like not her season. What if she moves with winter?
She does. Jim
Again,
said so.
yes, and again, I don't discount that it wouldn't be easier during winter, but she's still too strong to just hang around here. If she's on the same level as Ferrovax, who can warp reality around him if he goes into his natural form and sticks around in the mortal world and has to be careful, well, same deal with her. She's a little easier to do it. She can get away with it better because the Fae are tied closest to the mortal world, and she moves with the seasons. So she probably has like little subtle, kind of like how the Gatekeeper is old but not dead old because he uses the ebb and flow of the Never Never to cheat. Mab and Titania probably cheat a little that way. They can hang out more than someone like a dragon, but they still can't be here for too long.
Right.
I mean, the only supernatural thing we've seen Mac do is healing supernaturally fast when he's unconscious. That happened once.
Other than the tremendous amounts of knowledge he has.
But a human can have that amount of knowledge. There's nothing stopping him except for the fact, why would they have shared it?
The problem, so again, like all of the theories we have to this point, that fits 80%, but there are just things that, coincidentally or incidentally, you're not going to be able to match up, right? So he knows Odin, Vadarung, the Winter Queen. He was probably the Gatekeeper before Rashid, but he's definitely mortal. Okay, no. Where's he been hiding? Where does he sleep at night that he's not aging? Because we know how Rashid's doing it, right? So in order for that to fit, we need to come up with some other mechanism. So to me, the easiest thing to believe is that he's some kind of immortal, kind of like Tolkien elves, where he won't die of disease or old age or something, but he can definitely be perished. So, maybe he's
Functionally
Asgardian
immortal, right?
or something,
Right. He's functionally immortal, like a changeling or like
Exactly.
Kincaid,
Or Guard.
a Scion would be.
Well,
A changeling, they have the sense of being different.
yeah, I wonder if, and here's a crazy theory. I'm going to give out another crazy theory.
Really.
Let's just list the things we actually positively know, because some of that, what you were just saying, was a bit of supposition. That he can be killed. Well, I mean, he heals very, very quickly. We're kind of thinking in X-Men logic that means he can be killed if he just killed quick enough. But honestly, he might
Same
just
thing
heal very,
happened to
very
Garth.
quickly. There's a lot of possibilities, but we know he heals very, very quickly. We know he can give gifts, and he is not allowed or cannot talk in some capacity. Either is not
Or
allowed
he
or is
chooses
physically
not to.
unable,
We have
or
no.
chooses not, to. Right. So, and also that he knows a lot of stuff, and a lot of people, a lot of things know him. He has some kind of primordial connection to beer, whether it's because he's from
There's no proof
antiquity,
of that
because he's from
either.
beyond time, or because he just likes beer, right? Or just because he likes beer. Here's an idea. Some one character of white god level significance, which fits a lot of this very nicely. What if he's Cain? Agriculture, growing grain, brewing grain. You got beer. Cursed with some kind of walking around on the earth.
And his baldness, that's the mark of Cain, baldness.
Yeah, and that some tellings he's immortal or what have you. So I mean, this fits about as well as anything. But I like the grain beer.
It doesn't line up with the whole "I'm out" thing from what we know of the history of
Right.
evil like
That's
Cain.
true.
Killed his brother, got punished. When was he
Yeah.
ever in?
That's
There's
how he
the
got out.
20%.
He killed his brother. That's how he
There's
got out.
you just add in the word, the little bit of a Dresden Files special stuff. So we're missing 20%, and that 20% is the Dresden Files special sauce, which you haven't found out what it is yet. And that'll come in a couple books, and then we'll figure out what.
The 20% in that case is just going to be when he tells us who Mac is. Like, I don't think there are more clues. Like, I'm pretty sure we've got.
You don't think so?
I'm pretty sure we've got everything we need to guess now,
and a lot of red herrings.
Right. We just haven't fit it together. And what else could he tell us at this point? That isn't like, yes, he was the Watcher before, or he was the gatekeeper before Rashid.
Sure.
Well, that's who Mac is then. Like, even if you give us a different name, that's the answer.
I guess it was this whole Mac thing in the Revelations were coming in the context of a scene where Vadarung had just left and said, there's a lot of significance in you, and whatever. The people are now interested in you, and you came back from the dead, and now you're alive. And then Dresden says, "What do you mean? I don't understand." He says, "Correct that." So there's still a sense in the story, in the progression of natural arc of this series over 20 plus books, that we're still at the point where there still might be a good amount of revelation, a good amount of clues. I wouldn't put past Jim to have a couple more little hints like this before he has a big payoff towards book 20 or whatever.
Right.
Anyway. Digression, or you want to keep going?
I mean, I feel like we should get back on track.
Yes.
Well, the director don't care, so let's continue speculating.
Okay. So, chapter 23.
From here is my notes jump to the gardens for the trick or treat at the gardens thing.
Reading. Say something while I read.
Yeah, very interesting here. I mean,
what are you reading?
Yeah, she's reading the book because this is how she takes notes. Is that she could barely read and do things at the same time usually. Like I said, there weren't any other crazy nuggets. Like, they fight, Mac gives the 3 beer bottles, and then like this whole book is literally Harry being like, I don't got time for the shit, and going to the thing that he also doesn't have time for. So at this point, he pretty much goes to the gardens to talk to Lily, and because it's Harry and because he's clued in / the Winter Knight, he knows that there's like loads of fairies and other bodyguards around, right? So
yes, to the point, Katz, that says, if you prefer, I can slash your throat open now and save the vampire the cost of fuel.
Right. For me, the one of the biggest,
I love him.
Yeah, for me, one of the biggest things that I got out of this conversation, other than like the usual tidbits that you get that she drops on, is the fact that Lily thinks Harry could be Nemfected. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's important because that's still an open question and something that we've approached multiple times in the show, which is, can mortals actually be Nemfected, like openly changed? We know the dark wizards, the FBI agents, the yada, 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 they've been corrupted through power, right? But there hasn't been something so much as like, he's a puppet, right? Like they do to Cat Sith. Lily, not Lily, Maeve presumably keeps some of her autonomous will because she thinks she has anyway. Leah knew that she was basically being a puppet. Even though she got some of what she wanted, she knew that her will was not her own and that she needed to be saved, right? Maeve openly rejects being saved, which is part of why the whole plot of this book. But Lily, for once, she's the first person, I think, and the only person who's acknowledged that humans can be infected, or at least she thinks they can, because Maeve told her how to detect it, right? Which is something that we get later in the book anyway, is that Maeve taught her how to tell when somebody's sorry, caught this. So Lily, or Maeve taught Lily how to detect when somebody's infected so that she could pass the test herself and convince Lily, and all she has to do is sacrifice a couple of peons, right? So may not be the best indication, but I just thought that was interesting that Lily thought she could tell. So, and then, basically through part of it, I think they do talk about, the the previous people that Harry's gone up against, right? So they're saying anyway that Victor, the Feds, Kravos were all infected.
No, at least tainted by it is what she says.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to clarify too, is because to me it feels like, I don't know, this analogy is coming up a little short, but it's like, it's like being manipulated by the rings of power versus being like openly turned into a ring wraith or something, right? Like there's a difference here, right? Like, you can be swayed by the power without necessarily being like openly puppeted, because there's clearly a difference between like Victor and the Feds were under an influence versus Cat Sith is a fucking marionette, like somebody's got his strings. So
it still seems like a pretty open-ended question,
right?
Whether or not you can be directly impacted or infected,
like immortal,
you're human.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, because at least the way it operates, it seems to, or it has seemed to work so far. With it makes you go against your nature. Now you can do that as a human. You can go against your normal innate nature, but you also, as a human, always have the ability of choice to go against your nature in everyday life just on your own.
Right.
So what it latches onto in the Fae and what it does, making Leah be able to go up against, to defy her queen, to go against Mab, making Aurora go against the balance, against the nature of the equity between the courts, to allow Maeve to lie. These things are things that are inherently things that the Fae can't do.
Right.
So it depends on whether or not Nemesis was just kind of like pulling this. Obviously they had impact and they were pulling the strings behind Denton and Kravos and Cells, but whether or not they were directly inside them, quote unquote, like they were in the others, is the question.
I'm leaning towards that can't influence.
I tend to lean towards they can't too. I think the whole mortals and having free will and this whole importance about that, and various Word of Gyms and various factions that like that sort of thing tends to. I just like you could influence them. Obviously, you can make a human go against their morals and their own code, but I tend to think that Nemesis is a little more hands-on that way, and humans are just a bit too flexible and unpredictable, and the others with the rigid rules can be more easily manipulated in that way.
Right.
Twisted up. I also think like Lily's, oh, you've not been infected. It's like, well, what does she really know? Like,
well, she doesn't. I mean, they say as much at the end of the book, is that all, Mab is like, if it was that easy, fucking Nemesis wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, so she's not really an authority on can mortals even be infected, because she's probably been lied to.
Right. Good point.
But I mean, even the best lies come with that little grain of truth. So I have no problem believing that Harry's first 3 cases, and indeed the majority of his cases, have been at least Nemesis adjacent. Whether or not that means direct infection is the question.
Well, and I mean, if we're going to be Nemesis adjacent, though, that takes us all the way back to Cal and Komori and the Black Council, which have definitely been involved.
Well,
and we find out
allies at a minimum with them. One of them is probably, I'm sure the Black Council, some people think they're using them. Some people are maybe true believers and believe that the outsiders need to come in and wreck everything, like Dogma. What is that demon who is like, actively aids the plan to end reality, because, well, what's life for him? Life for him is shit anyway.
Right.
So I'm sure there's a bunch of different. I'm sure Calwan especially thinks he is probably like Justin. He probably thinks he's running the show, but actually he's not necessarily.
Right.
So the Red Court was definitely a patsy for them.
Oh yeah. Right.
So I'm sure there's various people on various levels playing multiple games of what they think is 4D chess with one another, and.
It's really funny is that Nicodemus is actually probably on Team Reality.
Well, he is. I mean,
yeah,
as far as we know, anyway.
He wants to rule over the Ashes, but he wants the Ashes.
Right.
Not
just that, but to me, the most credible thing is that the reason why he wants to wipe out so much of humanity is because the mortals are the ones that can bring the outsiders in and therefore destroy reality. So if I kill them first, I preserve reality.
Oh yeah, I have no doubt he sees us as the biggest security risk.
Right. And so like that's the whole like lawful evil comes all the way around to lawful good almost, right? In his mind, obviously, like, but killing humans.
We are told as much. He thinks he's
You
saving reality of the world.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another recent example. It's a Thanos complex, right? He's saving the universe by killing half of it. That's what Nicodemus is doing, I'm sure. Obviously we got, mainstream, we got for the Dresden Files, we got introduced to Nicodemus before, Marvel got around to capitalizing on their comic theories and everything like that. But, that's probably a better way of putting it, is that, obviously he's the bad guy, but you could almost see his point of view, so anyway, as part
Thanos' point of view in the movies, and not so much in the comic.
Well, in the comics, it was different.
Yeah.
Right. In the comics, he was just straight up crazy because he wanted to bang Death.
Yeah.
So, I guess that was too crazy for them. So they wanted to make him more empathetic or something. I don't know.
Only for half.
He's a compelling character in the movies.
They switched right back to maniacal overlord in the last movie, so that you had no problem with him dying.
Yeah. Well, it's the wrong podcast for that, but you and I can spar that one afterwards. So, so out of this conversation, we actually get quite a bit of information dump. So, Maeve shows up partway through, basically drops the bomb that Mab is actually who's infected. So you've got the whole like Spider-Man pointing at himself meme going on, where it's like, I'm not infected, you're infected. But then they do continue it on that like pretty much like all of Harry's case files tie into Nemesis in some way, right? So you've got vampires changing their diets, which this to me extends out to the White Court specifically, and getting their feeding on fear and everything like that. The actions of the Fillmore are laid bare at their feet. So what's interesting to me here, right, is that they don't have any qualms of while they are playing poker, they're definitely letting you see they're holding 3 aces, right? Like you definitely like, okay, so they're tipping their hand here, but it's also still a strong hand, So they're, even though we haven't really dug into the Fillmore, they're basically telling you Fillmore is definitely team Nemesis, already. That's what I got out of this conversation, other than the ambush leaving, obviously. So is there anything else we need to add?
I have a small thing. This is the last time until we see Cat Sith in the end. Like, this is the last time he's going to appear in a second.
Right. Which, is the ambush.
Yeah. I thought I had while we were talking, and we were talking about Cat Sith. Small side tangent, just a quick one. Is writing Cat Sith like the inspiration for Aeronauts Windlass and the cats in there, do you think?
Nah, Mister is the inspiration.
Right. I think
Cat
probably
Sith.
he's got parallel ideas for what's going on, right? But like the cats in the Aeronauts Windlass turn more into like Puss in Boots than Cat Sith is just the anthropomorphic cat, right? Like where it's like he's definitely the takes shit from nobody mortal dude stuck in a cat's body,
Also, he's the size of basically a jaguar.
Right.
So that helps.
So Harry was trying to be clever when talking to Maeve and Lily about being direct with them and demanding direct answers, which is how he gets conflicting information about whether Mab is infected or Maeve is infected, because he has to assume someone is lying, but fairies can't lie.
Right.
Until he figures out that that's what allowed.
I don't think he ever considers that Maeve is infected until way after, like after the Red Cap
talks to Fix. When he basically convinces Fix of what's going on, right? Like,
well, that too. I mean, later on the island, but when he finally has that speech where he's like, I know who my enemy is now. I'm going to start ripping masks off when they head off to the island for the final fight.
Yeah,
and I think that it's only then that he's really cluing in on to who that he's been played this whole time by her.
Right.
Yeah. Well, when he was explaining everything to the gang at Molly's apartment, and he was saying basically that someone has to be wrong, And so probably someone is lying. And then like 3 people say, well, fairies can't lie. That's the problem. Something has gone really, really wrong.
Right.
And he was trying to get around the way that fairies can lie through omission by being direct, but that doesn't help when the fairy can lie.
Right.
He probably doesn't get that insight if he doesn't have his talk with Titania and Mother Summer. So. Because then he's still like, but they can't lie. But then he sees the bigger picture and that Nemesis is a thing, and then it's like, oh, light bulb.
Well, and for him, it's like Nemesis is a thing, but, you know, honestly, like this, we're skipping ahead again, but his conversation with, you know, Mother Summer is really what tips it over. It's like, and we hinted at this a little bit last time, I think, where it's like, let's just say for a minute that Maeve is right. Do you really want Maeve to be right? And it's like,
perspective.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Because he's been getting fed this line since proven guilty by Maeve that Mab is like going nuts.
Right.
And you would think up until that point, like I get that he is very smartly and rightly afraid of Mab and thinks of her as insane in a way, and because she's a fairy and this, that, and the other thing. But even from proven guilty, when he gets that nugget onward, up until this point, he really should have clued in sooner onto who was, in my opinion, stringing him along here. Because like everything Mab has done is still within reason and logical, and this, that, and the other thing. Even if
some of it only makes sense in hindsight for this book, though, right? So
even with the whole kill my daughter, okay. So he has that conversation with the mothers later, and he's like, well, let's say Mab, for the sake of argument, is nuts, and then all of a sudden 2/3 of the court are now infected, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, then he sees the battlefield, and it's like, well, if she's really infected, you should know game would have been over a long time ago.
Right. Well, for me, it was always like, take it from, so first of all, Harry's retarded, right? We already know he's an idiot. So the second thing there, though, is like, look at all that he's gotten from Mab versus Maeve in the last several books. Like Maeve is actually calmed down when he sees her. Like, obviously she's still sleazy and she still makes a pass at him and whatever, because she has to, because she's Maeve, right? But she's had conversations with him and Max Barr, and they've been mostly all above the table and everything like that.
That was when she was infected, and that was when she was lying to him. She calmed
Harry
down.
Doesn't know that. We can't use ex post facto reasoning here. So what I'm saying is, compare that to what he's gotten out of Mab here, where Mab showed up and just by speaking words melted his brain, and she showed up a rage monster, and she showed up completely flipped, whereas like Maeve started to mellow out. So yes, those are both red flags, right? But if one chick starts acting somewhat normal and the other one goes off the deep end, which one do you think has lost it? Right. The crazy chick who suddenly becomes normal, or the normal chick who suddenly became crazy?
And that's why I think he is able to, you can string him along, but once he sees the gates and he sees that battle and he's talking to the gatekeeper, there should have been no doubt.
Right.
Yeah. It's a lot like Turncoat with what you're talking about, Justin. You don't worry about a friend who's becoming happy.
Right. Exactly. Like, you know, yeah, it's a flip of that trope, right? And so, like, Mab's the one shows up crazy. She's the one that suddenly got a thing for jumping Harry's bones and then literally does it, you know, like just all of that stuff. So it's pretty easy to say, oh, yeah, actually, Mab might actually be the crazy one. But like, as E.G. said, that might work up until you see the gates. And then you'd be like, wait, if she's nuts and she wants them to win, why is everything still working? You know, why did they not just win? Because yeah, that's a check.
He does realize that there, right? He does realize Mab is not crazy. Mab is not.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I don't remember the exact conversation, but I'm pretty sure he's still like chewing it over back at the apartment, even after he has the Gates talk with them, and then he clues in, like when the director said that, you know, but fairies can't lie, and then it like clicks in his head all of a sudden. It's like, no, we should have clicked in your head when you're looking at the World War II.
Right. Yeah.
We'll see when we get closer.
All right.
Like part 6 or something.
So the ambush is somewhat important for a couple of reasons. So as Andreas talked about, so basically they're on their way out. They realize that they're getting closed in. He basically gives Cat Sith a line along the lines of indulge yourself. So Cat Sith starts like taking out kneecaps and shit.
Yeah, and what is it? Ace finds Harry and starts beating him a whole bunch, and Harry
Right.
gets really, really, really loud because he knows Thomas is outside and will eventually make his way in.
Right.
And then a
then-
tiny blonde woman shows up.
Yeah, and then Murphy sees him, complete with biker leathers and beating with her helmet, right, or something like that. So, right. And then basically, while Ace is wallowing and whining, we find out that he's got daddy issues, namely
Red Cap is daddy.
Cap. Yeah, and the Red Cap could not give a fuck. Like, yeah, he'd be like, "Oh, you're drowning here. Let me step on your head." Like levels of don't care. So, but yeah, right. The line, right? So Cat Sith is running around behind him, and then Harry's like, "Hey, weren't there 7 of you guys a minute ago?" So
Weren't there 6 of you a minute ago?
right. Yep.
Cat Sith was
That's
fantastic.
the last we really see of the real Cat Sith.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then he gets overpowered and disappeared, and we don't find out until Blasting Rod later. So it's one of those things again where Harry like just trucks along, and you're not supposed to notice, and then he's like, "Wait a minute, I haven't seen you since the Gardens. That's a long time." So there's some fun conversation with Harry and Thomas again. Catching up on why Karen doesn't like him, and she's kind of
Well,
bothered. And
Nah,
Go ahead.
skipping things. Okay.
Okay.
So Harry needs to be carried out of the gardens because he's got tiny bits of metal in him and it's kind of disrupting him in every way. They get him into Thomas's SUV and they notice that Captain Hook has been captured by being hooked onto Harry.
that happens here. Okay.
Yeah, as they're leaving the gardens and he's bleeding all over the Hummer.
Right.
Yeah, they find Captain Hook, and then Harry wakes up with Butters working on him, and Hook is on a ceramic cookie tray inside the oven.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that was that line I skipped over because
Gotta give her something to think about, right?
that's a terrible way to treat the little folk man. He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna make a pie in front of him later."
Yeah.
So yeah,
God, I love Thomas.
right.
And Butters is all freaked out. It's like, you didn't even feel that, did you? Feel what?
Right.
Itching up your eyeball, that's what. And then Butters gives kind of a background of how Karen has been in the past year and getting more and more prickly, and she has issues with people going against orders, like dying and then coming back to life. And Thomas says, well, isn't she Catholic? Doesn't she know a guy?
Right. Yeah. Don't they have a guy? Like, yeah, that was definitely the line I was getting to was like, wait a minute. So
Okay, now continue on.
let's see. I think next is Gary, isn't it? So Butters and everybody talking about things, and then because that's the Paranet guy's name, right? Gary with the boats.
Right, Gary.
So yeah. So
Crazy, but not
Because
wrong,
we're
Gary.
actually on the air now, so I was wrong. There's at least one male paranetter, and it was Boat Gary, and everyone's like Boat Gary, and I'm like, who the fuck is Boat Gary? And then finally read it. I'm like, oh, Boat Gary. Like, yeah. So he sent me like 400 emails, including the last one, which is just all uppercase boats. But no, I think that happens later because we actually get like 2 passes at Boat Gary, but.
Yeah.
Them talking about boat rentals are 400% higher, and he can statistically prove when evil is afoot or whatever, by looking at patterns. So,
And the Paranet is
right.
connected through Twitter,
right.
but they don't really know what to do with that information yet.
I think there was
Right.
a guy who was like that in one of the early seasons of Supernatural. He could predict where the demons' attacks were going to be with his computer and shit.
Yeah, Mohawk guy from the
No, he had a mullet.
mullet. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
From the Roadhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse, I think. his
So-
name was.
No, Ash.
Ash, yeah. It's fun.
It was
Ignoring
Ash from
that-
Jesse, a Mohawk from Mullet.
Ignoring.
Yeah.
Ignoring. Going back to Cold Case. After Harry gets stitched up a bit, he goes to get a clean shirt because his has been burnt and Thomas has blood all over his because he's been shot, and Butters does his McCoy impression.
Right.
Murphy walks in and demands to have Bob the Skull back because she doesn't trust Harry with him.
Right.
Yeah, and then they kind of show down because for all that Harry might be leaning towards rapey in this book, he doesn't think of Murphy that way.
He doesn't think of her as food.
Right.
Is that what you mean? Okay.
Right. Because Harry looking at Molly, he wants to do bad things to her. Harry looking at Murphy, she's an equal and a predator as well.
Right. Well, yeah, because part of it is that he, even as scary as Molly is and as powerful as she is, he's never seen her on that level. So she's always going to be potential prey to the White Mantle side, right? And that's part of what's being established. But yes, the fact that he just got pummeled like a little bitch and then Murphy showed up and saved him probably has a little bit of something to do with that. But he has also always considered her more of an equal in that way. And I mean, that we could argue goes all the way back to Summer Night and finally letting her in on, everything. So, but anyway, I think the next part is the interrogation that I have. So,
Well, he has a nice little side conversation where she decides that she's the custodian of the swords now. So.
Right. It's all part of that same thing, right? Basically, that she's not giving the swords back because she doesn't think that he's ready for it and all that stuff. So,
yes, and I think we're at an hour if I've been keeping track of time correctly. If we want to stop here,
give or take.
Okay.
Yeah, pick it up here next time.
Yeah. So basically that's taken us to chapter 28. We have gotten through 10 chapters this time.
yay!
Hurrah!
This is a pretty
Half as
long
many as
map.
last time.
I was going to say that's less than last time by
Right.
almost half.
Yeah. We had really big tangents. Thank you, Andreas.
I mean, we have to figure out who Mac is. That's important shit.
Yes, we were going to do that podcast.
Yeah.
Well,
And it's only like the 5th time we've passed that. We've had that conversation. So,
Yeah, sure, totally.
it's slightly different every time. It's good to refresh.
We'll get there.
Anyway.
At some point, we'll just throwing darts at the board. We'll hit it at some point.
Well, once you say everything, something's got to be it.
Yeah.
like
And
once
then
we're
I'll feel
told,
superior
we can go back and we can say we said it.
Yeah, we said the word.
that was one of those 25 things we said. We guessed it. All right, Ben, you didn't do
Okay.
it, so you got to do the
Yeah,
outro.
so this has been a production of the Broken Jars Network. You've been watching the Dresden Files podcast.
Yeah.
that
Yay.
was
Okay, go check out many of the other fine podcasts, like High Fantasy, which is on hiatus. We got Andreas doing some role playing on what is that one again?
DMs Anonymous.
DMs Anonymous. What'd you cover last time?
What we covered last time? We covered. What did we cover? NPC creation. Was that what we
NPC.
covered?
What? Any big tips? Or you
Yeah,
still have
watch
to
the
watch this?
episode. Great tips.
Oh.
Love the tips. Woo!
Number
Fair
one tip,
enough.
watch the episode.
Oh, acting. We talked about acting NPCs, voice acting, stuff like that. That's what we talked about.
Oh,
Mm.
Interesting. And so if you want to work on your Butters gaming accent, go ahead and watch the DMs Anonymous. Also, we have a Great Scott, a podcast dedicated to the American Office. Winding down. It's getting close to the last couple seasons.
For 7
So
months now.
office.
Yeah. So let's see what else here. Oh, and Sim Talk, where we have somebody named Jacob. I think. Yeah, Jay. It's Jacob. Yes. And he does professional simulations. It's a very professional podcast. And he has real professionals on there. It's a great production. Go ahead, check it out as part of the Broken Jars Network. I think that's it.
Way to draw that
Anything
out.
else?
Please no.
No.
Until next time.
Next time on Dragon Ball Z.
Okay, let me figure out how to stop this. There it is.